your mom? Do you set an alarm, or does do not disturb on your phone wake you up? Is it the sun? Is it your bladder? Is it hunger? Is it a desire to make the most of every moment, or the urge to be more? Do any of you just roll over and go back to sleep, or at least pretend to? I always used to call this half sleep. How long can you keep it up? Can you roll over for 1 hour, 2, 5, a whole day? At what point do you just get a little bored and get out of bed? This is a little bit like Jubatia, one of Tripitaka's escorts from COG. That's Pigsy in the Journey West for all of you English speakers. He slept through, I don't know, at least a dozen battles in the course of the book because, well, reasons. But mostly just because he didn't want to get up. How many days do we just not want to get up? Newsflash, this generally does not work out well for Pigsy, does it? He is a lazy, gluttonous slob with no internal motivation and generally is of no use to anyone. Now, we are obviously supposed to be the opposites. We've already heard a speech on being perfect people, but society would tell us that perfect people are supposed to arise bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, at least pretending to be, every day, facing the world with a go-get-em attitude that promises to overcome every single adversity. But this sort of internal motivation has its downsides as well. It's sort of like Jay Gatsby at the beginning of the novel The Great Gatsby. Seeking social approval through glittering displays of wealth and ultimately aiming ambitiously at the love of a beautiful woman, he hides great personal flaws and ends up in a horrible, multiple homicide, messed up murder thing. Not a great thing. Okay, so these are both dark, heavy examples, but they illustrate the severe shortcomings to seeing life is all about one form of motivation or another. Pigsy represents an egregious example of those who are motivated externally, driven by pleasure and laziness more than anything else, and Gatsby alternatively represents the extreme form of intrinsic motivation. He is driven by goals and aspirations, but consumed by a will to accomplish these at any cost. We are more complex beings than that. To say that being motivated from within is better than from without is overly simplistic and one-dimensional. Literature provides such one-sided characters to help illustrate the flaws in these approaches to life. A pure layabout or a purely ambitious superachiever almost always ends badly. But how does our discussing this complexity help us? Can acknowledging such help get us out of bed in the morning? I would suggest that yes, it can. And I will propose today a few component elements to how we are motivated that might better account for why we do what we do, and in turn offer us a greater degree of variance in how we might grow and develop as individuals. More than a decade ago, successful programmer and venture capitalist Paul Graham wrote an essay on his blog that I found particularly useful in this endeavor, with a few amendments. Graham is a venture capitalist, so his aim is to make money, which colors the essay. This is not in itself a flawed aim, do not get me wrong, but it is not for everyone, and there are a couple of changes to his model that will tend to make it work and apply more broadly for other people. His essay is titled The Anatomy of Determination, and Graham argues that determination is the most important predictor of success. So why does he see determination as so important? Because determination is the secret sauce that helps us overcome adversity, and adversity is inevitable. We've heard a lot about different kinds of adversity today. Many of these speeches have touched on this subject. All of us face this. But I would posit that without adversity, nothing interesting happens. Think. The prince in Mark Twain's Prince and the Pauper But before he switches places with the titular pauper, is his life fun? Yeah, he's got everything, but it's rather boring. Or for a potentially more real-life example, think Sakyamuni, the Buddha, when he was still essentially imprisoned in a palace. These guys' story hasn't even started yet. The only thing desirable about this opening sequence of their lives is the innocence that they have. It is in adversity that people begin to become themselves. Some succeed, like Indiana Jones, Steve Jobs, or Bilbo Baggins. Others fail, like the Romanovs, or the families in Hong Lo Mung, the Dream of Red Mansions. But adversity is not fun, is it? I do not need to give you examples. Like I said, we've heard from plenty of other people about adversity today, but all of you in the audience have experienced this. We've all lived through 2020 and COVID. But pick any period of world history and it's there. I can talk about 9/11, I can talk about World War II, I can talk about the fall of Rome, the fall of Chang'an, the fall of Baghdad. History is full of situations that are terrible. Remember, we didn't start the fire. But people have been fighting the fire since it started. And Graham is not the first person or the only person to identify determination as an essential component in this fight. Some people call this determination, they call it grit. Some people call it chutzpah. For some it's drive, for others it's perseverance. To some it's a heavy dose of pig-headed stubbornness. These are all variations on a theme. Whatever we call it, this is a go-get-em attitude, a never-say-die attitude that turns even the most timid of us into a titan when the situation calls for it. At its heart, this is an unwillingness to give up on ourselves because, frankly, today is not the day I die. And this is what makes every single one of the rags to riches stories work, as well as what separates the superachiever from the silver spoon busybody. This is Joseph in his Technicolor Dreamcoat, and Julius Caesar when he's captive to the pirates. It's Captain Jack Sparrow and Andrew Carnegie and Xenophon and the Long Marchers and Washington crossing the Delaware. It's Jack Ma and Bill Gates. These are people who, for better or for worse, just refused to stop. And if adversity is the hammer coming down on each of these lives, determination is the anvil against which it strikes. And if that anvil is not there, then those people are going to get a severe beatdown. Graham's contribution is in helping us see what brings determination into being. He says determination consists of willfulness balanced with discipline and aimed by ambition. You see it right there in the middle, that sweet spot. He sees willfulness or willpower as essentially the raw stuff of determination. Discipline is a force that shapes this will, and ambition is a sort of laser pointer that gets it where it's going. Determination is the end product of this process, and it serves as a kind of fuel that drives us towards success, if success is possible. So let's look at each of these components in turn. All of us have said at some point, I want, about something, and then taken steps to get it. This may be nothing more than a toy from across the room or an ice cream cone. Whatever it is, it's the want and the movement that is key. In this, we have exercised our will. In a similar way, all of us have at some point practiced to become better at something. We've set up a system, we've followed through with one that's established for us, and because of this, we have improved. Maybe it was learning to write our names or do math. Maybe it was throwing a ball or baking cookies. Regardless, all of us have experienced in some way the fruits of self-discipline. Additionally, all of us have at some point cast our will to a desire that is distant and far off and removed from us, and then started to formulate a plan to accomplish this. This is ambition. Relative distance and or challenge is the key differentiator between will and ambition. Now, I would say Graham is spot on with identifying willpower and discipline as central to any endeavor, but I said that I differed with him, and I quibble with him on ambition. Ambition is not evil by itself, but it is generally hyper-focused on personal achievement. Any of you who know literature know the bad guys in literature are ambitious. This is Gatsby's flaw. This is Captain Ahab's flaw. This is Macbeth's flaw. In fact, this is such a trope that many stories show us the redemption of the villain precisely in the fact that they give up their ambition. Think Darth Vader or Boromir. They renounce their ambition, often they die, but this redeems them in some way. Remember, we didn't start the fire, but maybe the ambitious people did. Yet not all pursuits are driven by money and power and revenge. One of our other speakers was telling us about something else that drives us. We have simpler, personal, self-fulfilling goals, like understanding music, scaling mountains, seeing depressed friends smile. All of these are noteworthy, meaningful pursuits. In light of this, I would replace ambition with a term we've already heard today, passion. This I will define as an intense desire or enthusiasm for something. I will also replace determination with perseverance. Let's have the next chart. And I will give you the reasons for making that replacement here in a moment. What does this change accomplish for us? Well, like ambition, passion serves as a guiding force. It moves me from point A to point B further down the road. But unlike ambition, it's not automatically tied up in me. I can passionately do things that are great and awesome and probably will never cause any stock prices to go up. Seriously, ambition will almost always get me out of bed, but in a mean, brooding, angry sort of way. Passion is a lot more fun. So back to determination, or perseverance as I call it. We have discussed its origin, its value, and its necessity, but we have yet to really discuss why it works. A simple explanation is found in the book of James, a short text full of practical life advice. James says that we should consider difficulties to be joy because they develop perseverance, which in turn helps us to be mature and wise. Let's break that down a little. When we face adversity, we should consider it to be joy. For simplicity's sake, and the lit people in here will cringe when I say this, let's consider joy to be unbridled happiness. This seems a tall order. My phone is gone. Yay. I failed the exam. Awesome. I lost my job. Wonderful. I have bird flu. Couldn't be better. How can we really consider any of these things to be joyful experiences? I think the key is, for James, the win is not the adversity itself. Rather, it's in the resulting perseverance, and that in turn becoming maturity and wisdom. How's that work? Well, wisdom is primarily an ability to see things from multiple perspectives, other points of view. Think the old man in the Chinese fable who loses a horse, which causes him to get another horse, which causes his son to break his leg, which causes him not to be conscripted into the army and get to stay home instead of dying with the rest of the kids in the village. At each change, this old man seems almost able to predict the coming shift, but really he is simply able to acknowledge that every rose has its thorns. James tells us that adversity, thorny as it may seem, is beneficial because it helps us to develop this kind of perspective. So what does any of this have to do with getting out of bed in the morning? i.e., what value does this knowledge have in everyday lives? So I've been using a Venn diagram here for you teachers to track the model, but such a chart does more than just store names. It helps us envision relationships in ways that we might not otherwise see. There are 3 overlapping circles, and where they overlap, separate spaces become apparent. Through this, we can see that each element in this relationship has some space where it's alone. It's got a place where it's in the presence of one other element, and a place where all 3 connect. Now, we've said perseverance is at the place where the circles intersect. But what about all those other places? What about when you have 2 out of 3 or just 1 alone? What could this represent? I have suggested in this other chart that it represents some really interesting aspects about who we are as individuals. So by themselves, willpower, passion, and discipline are all severely deficient. For instance, willpower alone is all want and no give. It's trouble, it's addictions, it's crime, it's similar things to this. A servant of the will is the quintessential Pigsy from the story, an absolute hedonist who is a slave to whatever his will is caught by in any given moment. Almost on the opposite side of that is discipline. And this one doesn't really exist too often in real life all by itself. It might be embodied by the stereotypical drill sergeant. I had to scour literature to find examples like Phileas Fogg and Mycroft Holmes, represented as sort of robotic people who are all about the system and perpetuating the system. Finally, passion over here by itself is all dreams without any substance. This is the manic pixie dream girl. This is what might be completely disconnected from what is. Passion by itself is groundless. Both of its feet are in the air. It is so busy dreaming about possibilities that it's all but worthless right now in the present. But you can see I put some words in the center, and this is interesting because I think that what we see here is in the absence of a third element, we start to see some of the most common reasons for personal failure. If any of you guys bear any resonance with what we see here in your lives, then the goals that have always eluded you might just be attainable if you stretch out in one of these directions a little bit. Take, for instance, discipline and passion. When passion begins to take on form and structure, enthusiasm is born. In this, we see a person who is interested in things, many things, all sorts of things. But whenever you get interested in something and you start to learn about something, it gets hard, right? And there comes a point where the challenges around it are too much. There's no will to carry on. And the enthusiast backs off. These are dilettantes, weekend warriors. They spend a little bit of time learning reasonably well about many things, and they lack the willpower to follow through and become proficient at anything. In this case, the doctor might order a good case of asserting the will, adopting an I'm gonna do this kind of attitude for something, and it might just kickstart that perseverance factor in their lives. What about discipline and willpower? These give rise to studiousness. Here we see a model student who gets good marks, but nevertheless doesn't do anything to stand out. They become a cog in the machine, dependable and solid, but never finding anything that inspires them to more. In this case, the doctor orders inspiration, wonder, passion. Find something you love and shine. Chase your dreams. And with the already impressive work ethic that you've demonstrated, you will find the stars. Speaking of stars, willpower and passion together create shooting stars. What do I mean? These are people who are full of ideas and they are very driven, and other people flock to their side. They might even successfully rise into the stratosphere, but without discipline, they will not stay there. They're one-hit wonders who, despite their passion and desire, do not know the first thing about following through or continuing what they have. If they really want ongoing success, they will need to bring structure and organization into the way that they do things. Otherwise, they will crash and burn and likely become something very bitter and small. And this brings us back around to the sweet spot. All three of these in harmony. Willpower, honed by discipline, steered by passion, tempered by adversity, into long-suffering, patient-driven perseverance, which given time leads to wisdom. Does this have the power to get us out of bed in the morning, every morning, no matter how dark it may be? Yes, I think it does. Because staying in bed is only one approach to life, and we've already seen that the wise are not limited by these constraints. Have circumstances robbed us of the will to go on? Wisdom shows us that this too shall pass. It tells us life will feel better with a hot shower and a cup of coffee. Get out of bed. Are our dreams dead and dying in the dust at our feet? Wisdom tells us there are more things in heaven and earth than we have dreamt of. Maybe we need a new one. And ironically, bed is not the best place to find our new dreams. Get up. Does it seem that no matter how we play the game, the dice never come up our way? We've studied, we've built and rebuilt, we've designed and redesigned, and nothing seems to work. Wisdom says, your dream is sound, and you are the right person for it. The only disciplined thing to do is try again. Get up, get back to the drawing board, and we'll see what we're missing. On most days, we get out of bed easily enough. And no matter how much we hate the alarm, we still find the will to do it. And most days, they do not present us with existential crises where we have to rely on this type of thing. If they do, please talk to somebody. But all of us have days when getting out of bed is hard. Keep going, stay strong, brighter days are coming. With a little perseverance, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are coming away from, you can always find a good reason to do so, and that is the definition of wisdom.